Now, immediately after his Chamber win, McIntyre was attacked by Lashley, still upset over his U.S. title loss, even though he was never pinned. MVP had brokered a deal with Miz for what came next. The Miz came out and he cashed in his Money in the Bank and pinned Drew McIntyre to become a 2-time WWE champion. 10 years between title runs for The Miz, making him the first ever 2-time Grand Slam winner in company history, winning all of the major titles twice. The WWE title, the Intercontinental title, the United States Championship, and the tag team titles. Because nothing screams WrestleMania season like The Miz as WWE champion. His role will hopefully only be transitional. His role should only be transitional. Considering that there is another man who has never been WWE champion before, who also happens to be getting the biggest push of his life right now. And timing is everything. That man is Bobby Lashley, who showed up to collect his debt on this show Monday night from The Miz. And I have to give praise to WWE's booking of Lashley on Monday night from start to finish, from the opening segment to the closing segment of this show. The only way they could have handled Lashley better would have been to put the title on him. A lot of people thought Miz is going to be a 24-hour champion. It's like having a 24-hour stomach bug. That's actually a great analogy to use. Miz becoming WWE champion is like a stomach virus. It's like shitting your brains out all day long and being doubled over in pain. Hopefully after 24 hours it passes. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. Miz did not want to pay that favor back that Lashley did for him the night before, and so Lashley gave him 1 hour to give him what he wants, which was, I thought, was brilliant. I thought it was a great hook for the 9 p.m. hour. It wasn't, oh, you have until the end of the show. It was, you got 1 hour. They were trying to bridge the gap from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. I thought it was a great hook for people to stick around and keep them tuned in. I liked that, but they still dropped. Unfortunately for them, they still dropped from hour 1 to hour 2, even though the show on the whole was actually a little bit up from recent weeks, but coming off a pay-per-view, you would kind of hope for it to be. You know, years ago, you would expect the pay-per-view bounce. The pay-per-view bounce would usually be more than just a tenth of a point or 2/10 of a point. So even the pay-per-view bounce that they might get these days ain't like the pay-per-view bounces from a few years ago. Those days are over. But that set the stage for what we thought might be a WWE title match between Miz and Lashley. But when Miz walked to the ring, he was still in his suit. He tried to talk his way out of it. Let's wait another week. I'm not ready. That brought out Braun Strowman, who said he was more clarified for a shot than Lashley was. His words, not mine. To clarify, Braun Strowman speak caveman, but not English, apparently. More qualified, not clarified. Shane McMahon danced his way to the ring. They actually piped in loud Shane O'Mac chants once he was in the ring, to the point that he had to pause to acknowledge them, which is just ridiculous. I mean, it is so... Like, pipe in crowd noise, that's great. I'd rather have some noise than silence. But when they really go overboard with these chants, and the wrestlers have to interact with the chants as if the chants themselves are real, that's just fucking lame. Please don't do that. He told Strowman that he couldn't just demand stuff. And he made a match between Strowman and Lashley for later in the show, where if Braun Strowman won, The Miz against Lashley, which is coming up on Raw this week, would turn into a triple threat for the WWE Championship. And again, I like this because most people probably expected them to stack the deck against Miz and do that triple threat match. So when Braun did not win, I think it probably surprised a lot of people, and it kept Lashley looking dominant. Lashley beating Braun Strowman at the end of the show was a nice surprise. I'm glad they resisted the temptation to turn that match with Miz tomorrow night into a triple threat. There's no need for one. They used Strowman to get Lashley over even more as a wrecking machine. He kicked out of one of Braun's power slams, and then he gave him a spine buster and a spear for the clean win. Then he put him in the hurt lock until Braun passed out. Miz tried to attack Lashley from behind. Lashley gave him a one-arm spine buster and a spear. So, do they put the WWE title on Bobby Lashley tomorrow night? They sure do want you to think they will. There's nowhere for Miz to run. There's nowhere for Miz to hide. But there was someone noticeably absent from Raw last Monday, and that's Drew McIntyre. The same Drew McIntyre who Lashley assaulted before Miz cashed in and won the title. I believe Drew McIntyre is going to repay the favor to Bobby Lashley tomorrow night, and if so, then there will be no WWE title change on Raw. They want you so badly to think there's going to be a title change to the point where I don't think there's going to be one. I think they're going to want to drag this out a little bit more. I think they're going to want to drag this out until the next pay-per-view. Fast Lane is on March 21st. We may have many more weeks of Miz as WWE champ, because I don't believe Miz is going into WrestleMania as the champion. Whether it happens tomorrow night or it happens on the 21st, I do believe that Miz is going to drop the belt, and that it will be, and it should be, to Bobby Lashley. That title has to find its way around Lashley's waist by Fastlane. And I think that's where we get the triple threat. Drew got screwed over at Elimination Chamber, and he has a legitimate claim to a rematch. If he turns around and he screws Lashley out of a title win on Raw tomorrow night, then MVP can turn around and claim, hey, Lashley deserves a rematch. Miz is the champion, and so there you go. There's your three-way for the first ever pay-per-view on Peacock. Although now I see they're advertising Fastlane as airing on both Peacock and on the WWE Network, because they probably realize this ain't going to be so easy. Migrating all of this content over to a new video service might take a little bit longer than we thought. And so to make sure that people don't get shut out and there's no technical issues, it sounds like it's going to air on both platforms. I've gotten questions from people asking me, has there been any update on how this migration is going to work from the network to Peacock? WWE themselves, when they made the announcement and on the investors call, they said that as we get closer, we will let you know. Well, if that's the case, then I would say by next week, that's a pretty good fucking time to have to let people know what the hell's going on. Everything I'm reading and I'm seeing indicates that, originally the idea was you wouldn't have to do anything. Your account would automatically be migrated over to Peacock. Now I'm seeing the opposite, where you might actually have to physically go to the Peacock site, sign up for an account. I mean, it's not a hard thing to do, but there's a lot of people out there who aren't going to do that. Or they're not going to know, oh, I have to do something? That's ridiculous. But they haven't officially told us exactly how this migration is going to work. So again, they're going to have to get their shit together in the next week or so. It's already going to be the beginning of March. Tomorrow is March 1st. We're not that far away. I'm starting to get very worried because there's a lot of classic content that I haven't been able to catch up with. Like the Superstars and the Wrestling Challenge stuff. I've just been so busy. And I mean, I'm sure that stuff will eventually migrate over. But if on the I think March 18th is the target date to do the migration, it's very possible that a lot of that stuff ain't going to be up and functioning on March 18th. I don't know how much of a priority it's going to be for the folks at Peacock to get all that stuff up and running so quickly. It will get up eventually. But I'm not convinced it'll be up on day 1 or even day 7 or day 14. So I'm starting to get a little worried here that I don't know what we're going to have access to and not have access to in the first few weeks of this migration. But in any event, there is, when I think about the outcome here, there is almost no ideal outcome to a Lashley-McIntyre match at WrestleMania, if that's what we get. If we get a singles match between Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania, either Lashley ends up with what? A 3-week run as the WWE champion, which is too short. And he could always win it back, but that's too short. It's like Edge when he won the title and cashed in on John Cena at New Year's Revolution. And he actually had a noticeable impact on the ratings in the weeks that followed, but 3 weeks later, they took the belt right back and put it on John Cena. So I think it would be too short-sighted to do that to Lashley, or he retains and then Drew McIntyre's run is pretty much over. Now, I know some people found Drew to be a boring WWE champion. I think he did fine under very challenging circumstances. Roman Reigns is doing great under those same circumstances. If anything, he has found a way to excel under these conditions with no fans and piped-in noise, Thunderdome, and all that kind of stuff. But Drew is a good champion, and I think he deserved a proper run in front of live audiences. If I had to choose between the two of them, though, if you ask me right now, okay, Solomonster, you got to pick one. Long term, who gets the belt and holds on to it for a while? Well, Drew had his run, and now it's Lashley's time. You don't know how long this Lashley run is going to last. I mean, you could turn around in 2 months, and Bobby Lashley has fizzled out. Drew had his run for much of last year. If I had to make a choice, then the choice is very easy. The choice is Bobby Lashley. You go with the new hand. New hand in that, he not that he's new, but you know what I mean. I mean, he is getting this absolute monster run right now, the likes of which he's never had in his career. For all the years he's been in this company, in and out, he's never been pushed this hard the way that he's being pushed right now. But then I kind of look at, okay, let's say Lashley comes out of WrestleMania as the champion and Drew takes a back seat for a while. Boy, I look at that Raw roster, and unless they shake that roster up again after WrestleMania or they have a draft or something, there aren't very many good options for challengers, for babyface challengers for Bobby Lashley. He's already submitted Jeff Hardy 1,000 times. Jeff Hardy is not a good solution anyway. He's done the same thing with Matt Riddle. He already beat Braun Strowman pretty decisively. The only other name I could think of would be, like, coming out of Mania, if you needed somebody new, would be Keith Lee. And we don't even know what the hell is going on with him. Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods beat T-Bar and Mace in a quick match, and Mustafa Ali was screaming at all of the Retribution goofs when the match was over about all that he had done for them, and this is how you repay me. They continue to fail him and to embarrass him. He has had enough. You could have had Ali cut the same promo on Vince McMahon and the creative team backstage, and it would have been every bit as accurate. The good news, this felt to me like the beginning of the end of Retribution. I mean, it was the beginning of the end of Retribution the day that they firebombed that generator in the parking lot. It was the beginning of the end on day one. But this really could be the end of this group. It was a failure from the very beginning. What could Ali do? There was nothing he could do. There was not a damn thing that this man could do to save this heaping pile of shit. He could have dressed it up in a suit with a little bow tie on it and a pocket square. Guess what? Underneath, it's still shit. You've heard the expression putting lipstick on a pig, right? I'm sure you've heard that expression before. This was like trying to put lipstick on that guy from RoboCop after he took the acid bath. His skin's all hanging off, right? He's screaming, "Help me! Help me!" Take it out back and shoot it. Even if they kill off Retribution and take these people off TV, you might say, well, Solomonster, I mean, how does that help them if they take these people off TV? They're getting TV time. And what if they just kill the whole group and now they're not going to be on TV anymore? It is actively doing damage to these people's careers. Now, I know they're wearing masks. That might be the only saving grace. They could at least try to hide their identity. But they are doing damage to these people's careers, to their prospects. But they would be better off not even being on TV. If this is as good as it gets, if this is the best idea they could come up with for these people, then they're better off not even being on TV for like a good 6 months. Long enough for people to forget that this ever happened.